The stars burned quietly above the imperial hall of Kareth Prime. Inside, under a dome of silver and black glass, stood hundreds of alien delegates, tall, scaled, and armored in crimson plates. Their glowing eyes turned toward the human who had come so far to speak of peace. Ambassador Daniel Hale stood in the center of the chamber, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Terran Alliance. His voice was calm but firm as it echoed through the hall. "We don't come to rule," he said. "We only ask for cooperation, trade, and respect. Humanity wants peace." For a moment, there was silence. Then came laughter, cold, sharp, metallic laughter from the throne above. The Emperor of Kareth rose from his seat. His 4 eyes gleamed like molten gold. "Peace," he hissed. "Your kind is weak. You spread like a disease through the stars." Hale did not flinch. He knew the risks. This mission was dangerous. Still, he believed diplomacy could prevent another war. The Kareth Empire was ancient, proud, and cruel, but even they must understand the cost of fighting humanity. But the Emperor had already made his choice. "Execution," he said simply. The hall filled with shocked murmurs. 2 massive guards stepped forward. Before Hale could react, a blade of plasma flashed, bright, silent, and final. The human ambassador fell to the floor. His blood smoked against the cold black stone. For a long second, no one moved. Then, from somewhere deep in the hall, a human observer, a young translator named Elena Ward, screamed. She had seen the entire thing. The moment the guards grabbed her, she was already transmitting the recording to her ship in orbit. By the time the Kareth found her communicator, it was too late. The message was gone. Humanity would know. On Earth, the message played across every command screen of the Terran Defense Network. Fleet Admiral Marcus Reeve stood frozen as the image of Hale's death repeated again and again. Around him, officers watched in silence, their faces pale and hard. Reeve turned to his second-in-command. "Send it to the Council," he said quietly. "And prepare Fleet Command Alpha." "Sir?" the officer asked. "Is this a declaration of war?" Reeve's eyes narrowed. "No," he said. "This is justice." 2 weeks later, in the black silence of deep space, an entire human battle group appeared at the edge of the Kareth home system. 30 ships, carriers, destroyers, and dreadnoughts, slid from the dark like wolves out of fog. They bore no flags, no warning, no request for parley. The Kareth had never seen a human fleet this close before. They thought humanity was still recovering from the last frontier war. They were wrong. Inside the flagship TAS Vengeance, Captain Lien Ortega stood before the bridge window, looking at the golden sun of Kareth Prime. "Are the drop teams ready?" she asked. "Ready and waiting," replied her first officer. "Orders, Captain." Ortega's voice was cold. "We are not here to conquer," she said. "We are here to deliver a message. They killed one of ours. Now we take their emperor." No one on the bridge spoke after that. Kareth Prime was protected by 10 planetary defense stations. In the first hour, 9 of them went dark. The 10th managed to fire only once before human railguns shattered it from orbit. Then, through the burning clouds, the Terran drop pods fell, thousands of them, streaks of fire raining down on the Imperial city. From the surface, the Kareth army fought hard. Plasma turrets lit the skies. The air trembled with explosions. But the humans kept advancing, silent, coordinated, merciless. They used no old strategies. They fought like they had learned every weakness of their enemy long before they arrived. In the ruins of the outer district, a Kareth general screamed into his comms, "Who are these monsters? They fight without fear." A human marine walked past his position minutes later. "We're not monsters," she whispered over his dying body. "We're humans." By nightfall, the Terran forces had reached the Imperial Palace. The golden gates that had stood for 4,000 years were blown open. Inside, the Emperor's guards formed a final circle around their ruler. Then the palace doors shook, once, twice, and collapsed in a thunder of steel. Captain Ortega walked in, her armor scorched but unbroken. Around her marched a dozen Terran soldiers, silent and cold. The Emperor glared down from his throne. "You think you can kill me?" he growled. Ortega raised her weapon. "No," she said quietly. "We came to remind you of something." He sneered. "And what is that?" "That humanity doesn't beg for peace," Ortega said, taking a slow step forward. "We offer it once." The Emperor's claws tightened around his staff. "You'll regret this." The next sound was the echo of gunfire in the great hall of Careth Prime. And when the smoke cleared, the Emperor of Careth lay dead. From orbit, the message went out to every world in the sector. They killed a human diplomat. So humanity claimed their Emperor's head. The galaxy would never forget what happened that day. And this was only the beginning. The palace of Careth Prime still burned. Smoke rose into the black sky, painting it with ashes and flame. The once proud towers of the Careth Empire were broken, their golden banners torn and trampled beneath Terran boots. Captain Lien Ortega stood on the palace balcony, her armor splattered with soot. Below her, the city of the Careth Emperor burned like a dying sun. Every explosion echoed across the distance, a heartbeat of vengeance. Her comlink buzzed. "Captain, this is Fleet Command. Mission complete. The Emperor is confirmed dead. Orders." Ortega looked toward the horizon, the great statue of the Emperor now half destroyed, its head missing. "Transmit the message," she said. "Then pull the troops out. We've made our point." The officer hesitated. "And what about the civilians, Captain?" Ortega's eyes darkened. "We're not them," she said. "Provide aid. Evacuate the wounded. Even if they hate us." In the Terran fleet's command room above Careth Prime, Admiral Marcus Reeve watched the live feed. Silence filled the chamber. Around him, other officers waited, unsure whether to celebrate or to mourn. The Emperor was dead, the first alien ruler to fall by human hands since the founding of the Alliance. The message had already spread through the galaxy. Every channel, every news wave, every system. The footage was everywhere. The execution of a human diplomat, followed by the fall of the Careth throne. "Admiral," said a communications officer, "we're receiving transmissions from other empires. The Vora Collective is condemning us. The Trell Federation has called for a council meeting. And the Mercian Syndicate." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "What about them? They're offering weapons. And an alliance." The Admiral's lips pressed into a thin line. "Of course they are." He knew what would come next. The galaxy would divide, half in fear of humanity, half eager to use them as a weapon. But humanity didn't want another war. They wanted respect. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows of the Careth ruins, a single figure moved through the smoke. It was not human, it was one of the Careth royal guards. His name was Vale. He had survived the final assault, hidden among the bodies of his fallen brothers. His chest burned with shame, his mind with fury. He watched the humans leaving the palace. Their ships rose like iron beasts into the red sky. He clenched his claws around a shard of metal and whispered, "You may have killed our emperor, but you haven't killed our spirit." Then he vanished into the underground tunnels. 3 days later, the Terran flagship Vengeance entered hyperspace, heading back to Earth. Captain Ortega stood in the observation deck, staring at the endless blue tunnel of light. She knew the galaxy would never be the same. She also knew what the media back home would say, that humanity had taken revenge, that they had shown their strength. But she didn't feel proud. She felt tired. Admiral Reeve's face appeared on the deck screen. "Captain," he said, "the Council has approved a peace summit. They want you to represent the fleet." Ortega blinked. "Peace? After this?" Reeve nodded. "Yes. The galaxy is afraid, Lien. That fear could start a war, or it could give us a chance to finally be heard." She sighed. "Understood, sir." But deep down, she wasn't sure peace was possible anymore. Far across the galaxy, in a dark throne room of another empire, a hologram flickered to life. It showed the burning of Kareth Prime, the dead emperor, the Terran banners in his hall. A cold, mechanical voice spoke. "So the humans have shown their hand." Another voice, softer, replied, "They've proven they're not prey. But that makes them dangerous." The hologram turned off. In the silence that followed, a new plan began to take shape, one that would make humanity regret ever stepping into the stars. Back on Earth, billions of people watched the broadcasts. Some cheered. Some cried. For the first time, humanity stood as one, united not by fear, but by fury, pride, and grief. Ambassador Hale's name became legend. Streets were named after him. Statues were built. Children in schools learned his last words, "Humanity wants peace." But the old soldiers knew the truth. Peace never comes easy. Admiral Reeve sat alone in his office, watching the stars beyond the window. He whispered quietly, "They killed one man. We killed an empire. Now they'll come for us." He wasn't wrong. Because even as the humans rebuilt, the survivors of the Kareth Empire gathered in the dark. Under new leaders, they swore an oath, to avenge their emperor and bring fire to Earth itself. And somewhere out there, in the cold silence between stars, a Kareth warship was already moving toward human space. Its engines burned red. Its weapons were armed. And its message was clear. For the Emperor, the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The stars over Earth looked peaceful that night. From orbit, the blue planet glowed like a promise. Calm, safe, alive. No one could imagine that death was already on its way. Far beyond the outer colonies, in the dark between systems, something moved, silent, cloaked, and patient. A Kareth warship. Its hull was jagged like broken glass, its engines burning faint red. Inside, the air was thick with anger and revenge. Commander Vale stood on the bridge, his eyes glowing with hate. "Lock coordinates," he ordered. "Their outer colony, Vega 9. Wipe it from existence." The weapons officer hesitated. "Commander, our fleet is not ready. One ship cannot." Vale turned sharply. "Do it. The Emperor's blood cries out for vengeance." The officer obeyed. Moments later, the ship's cannons fired. A beam of white light cut through space, fast, precise, unstoppable. On the planet below, 10,000 humans saw a flash in the sky. Then came silence. The colony was gone. No warnings. No survivors. On Earth, alarms screamed across the Terran defense network. Admiral Marcus Reeve was pulled from a late meeting and rushed to command. "Report," he barked. A young officer looked pale. "Sir, we lost Vega 9. Entire colony destroyed in one strike. Energy reading is unlike anything we've seen before." Reeve's face hardened. "Show me." The holomap blinked. A red mark flashed where Vega 9 had been. Around it, radiation spread like ink in water. "That's not a weapon," said Reeve slowly. "That's a message." He turned to his staff. "Prepare fleet command. Tell them the Kareth survivors have made their move." Meanwhile, Captain Lien Ortega had just returned to Earth after the Kareth campaign. She had hoped for rest, for silence. Instead, she found chaos. Reporters surrounded her ship, shouting questions. "Captain, did you expect retaliation? Do you regret killing their emperor? Is humanity now at war again?" She didn't answer. She just walked past them, her eyes tired, her hands trembling slightly. Inside the command center, Admiral Reeve met her with a grim nod. "Welcome back, Captain. I wish it were under better circumstances." Ortega frowned. "What happened?" "Vega 9, he said. "They hit it. Completely destroyed. Not even dust left." She froze. "One ship?" "Yes. A new weapon, maybe a prototype. We need answers. Fast." Ortega took a deep breath. Then I'll find them. A week later, Ortega's ship Vengeance left orbit again, this time heading into the dark zone, the empty systems where Kareth survivors were rumored to hide. The crew was tense. They knew the stories, entire patrols vanishing, colonies going silent. On the fourth day, they found it. A debris field, floating bodies, broken ships, and a single glowing beacon sending a strange signal. Ortega ordered a scan. "Captain," said the sensor officer, "the signal is human. It's a distress code from the Solara, one of our lost research vessels." "Bring it aboard," Ortega ordered. The beacon was pulled into the cargo bay. As the technicians examined it, the lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. "Captain!" shouted an engineer. "It's not a beacon, it's—" Before he could finish, a blinding surge of light exploded through the ship. Alarms screamed. The hull trembled. Ortega was thrown to the floor. "What happened?" "It's a virus, ma'am," the tech officer yelled. "It's inside our systems. We're losing control of the ship." Ortega grabbed the console. "Shut it down. Now." But it was too late. The ship's own weapons turned online, targeting their fleet allies nearby. Across space, human ships began firing on each other. Confusion, panic, betrayal, all within seconds. On the Kareth warship, Commander Vale watched the chaos unfold on his screen and smiled. "Let them destroy themselves," he whispered. "Revenge tastes sweeter when they do the killing." Hours later, silence returned. The human fleet was shattered, 3 ships lost, hundreds dead. The virus had finally burned out, but the damage was done. On the bridge of the Vengeance, smoke filled the air. Ortega coughed, her voice hoarse. "Status. Half the systems down. Engines offline. We're stranded." She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Vale was watching. "Admiral," she said over the damaged comms, "this isn't war anymore. It's a hunt. And we're the prey." Reeves' voice came through, faint but steady. "No, Captain. Humanity has never been prey. Track them. Learn how they did this. We'll hit back harder." Back on Kareth Prime's ruins, deep underground, Vale stood before a new machine, a massive structure pulsing with light. Around him, Kareth engineers worked in silence, rebuilding, plotting. "This," Vale said, placing his hand on the glowing core, "will end them all. The weapon that erased Vega 9 was only a test. Soon, we strike Earth." A scientist turned to him. "Commander, the power source is unstable. It could destroy us all." Vale smiled. "Then it will be a worthy death. For the Emperor." He looked up at the stars, at the direction of Earth, and whispered, "Run while you can, humans. Your time among the stars is almost over." On the damaged bridge of Vengeance, Captain Ortega whispered back into the dark, "Come, then. We're waiting." And in that quiet moment, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The next move would decide the fate of 2 civilizations. The galaxy was quiet again, but everyone could feel it, the silence before another storm. Earth was still mourning the loss of Vega 9. The news called it the brightest colony ever built. Now it was only dust floating in space. Families cried, politicians made speeches, and the Terran fleet prepared for what they all knew was coming. But Admiral Marcus Reeve wasn't preparing for another open war. He knew the Kareth wanted that, a grand battle, blood for blood. No. Humanity would fight differently this time. In a dim command room beneath the Terran Defense Headquarters, he stood with a handful of officers and scientists. Holograms of broken ships floated above the table. "Captain Ortega's report confirms it," Reeve said. "The Kareth used a virus inside a human beacon. It rewrote our ship systems and turned our weapons against us." One of the scientists, Dr. Mia Chen, spoke softly. "Sir, if they can infect our ships remotely, every human fleet is in danger." Reeve nodded. "That's why we need to find where that weapon came from. Before they finish building the next one." He turned to Ortega, who stood silently near the edge of the room, her uniform still scorched from the last battle. "Captain," Reeve said, "I'm giving you a new mission. Unofficial. Off the record. Find the Kareth base. Destroy it before they strike again." Ortega met his eyes. "Do I get a fleet?" Reeve's voice was calm. "No. You get one ship. And a team no one will ever admit exists." 3 days later, a small black vessel left Earth's orbit without lights, without transponders, without a name. Its crew called it Ghost. Captain Ortega led them, a dozen soldiers, 2 hackers, and 1 alien defector from a neutral world named Saren. He was tall, silver-skinned, and quiet, with sharp eyes that seemed to read minds. As the ship drifted through deep space, Ortega stood beside Saren at the main console. "You sure your intel is right?" she asked. Saren nodded slowly. "The Kareth have rebuilt under the old city of Varnock. Their new weapon draws power from something ancient, not made by them." "Ancient?" Ortega frowned. "What do you mean?" Saren hesitated. "It's older than both our species. A relic buried before any empire rose. They found it, woke it, and now they're trying to control it." Ortega stared at him. "And if they succeed?" He looked out the window into the darkness. "Then there will be no more stars left to fight under." Far away, beneath the ruined surface of Kareth Prime, Commander Vale stood in the heart of the weapon chamber. The massive structure pulsed with deep red light, like a heartbeat. The scientists worked around him, whispering data and calibrations. The power readings were unstable, but stronger than anything they'd seen before. Vale turned to his lead engineer. "How soon?" 2 weeks, Commander. Once fully charged, it can erase an entire solar system." Vale smiled. "Then Earth will learn what fear truly means." The Ghost slipped into Kareth space under a false signal. It pretended to be a supply drone, moving quietly between wrecked trade routes. Ortega's crew moved like ghosts themselves. No words, no noise, every system running cold. Dr. Chen's voice came over comms. "Captain, we're detecting high radiation ahead, same signature that destroyed Vega 9. Saren looked up sharply. "That's it. The weapon site." The ship descended into the atmosphere, through clouds of ash and lightning. Below them, the ruins of Kareth Prime stretched like a graveyard, twisted metal, shattered towers, rivers of black dust. And in the middle of it all, a huge structure glowing red. "The heart of the beast," Ortega whispered. They landed 2 kilometers away, under the shadow of a broken fortress. The crew moved out on foot, wearing stealth suits that blended with the ruins. The air smelled of smoke and old blood. When they reached the outer perimeter, they saw the weapon for the first time up close. It was alive. Massive cables pulsed like veins, feeding energy into a giant core that throbbed like a heart. Around it, hundreds of Kareth soldiers guarded the site. Ortega whispered into her comm, "Dr. Chen, how much time to overload it?" 30 minutes, if I can reach the control hub," came the reply. "Then move." The humans slipped inside, shadows in the smoke. They worked fast, cutting wires, planting charges, uploading viruses into alien consoles. Every second felt like a blade at their backs. Then, suddenly, a sound, metallic footsteps. "Captain!" hissed a soldier. "We've been spotted." Laser fire filled the air. The stealth field flickered. Ortega shouted, "Cover Chen. Get her to the core." The team split. Explosions echoed through the tunnels. Ortega's rifle blazed as she covered the retreat. Kareth soldiers fell one after another, but there were too many. Vale himself appeared at the top of the stairs, his armor glowing crimson. "Human," he roared. "You should have stayed in your grave." Ortega raised her weapon. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing." They charged, blades and bullets colliding in the flashing red light of the ancient weapon. Above, in orbit, the Ghost detected the first energy spike. "Captain, the weapon is powering up," yelled the pilot over comms. Down below, Dr. Chen shouted. Almost there. Just one more. A blinding surge filled the chamber. Ortega fell to her knees. The entire structure shook as the ancient core screamed like a living thing. Vale lunged forward, slamming Ortega to the floor. You can't stop it, he shouted. Ortega's hand closed around the detonator. Her voice was calm. I don't have to. She pressed the button. The mountain erupted in white fire. From orbit, the explosion looked like a second sunrise. Hours later, Admiral Reeve received a transmission. The image was static, broken, but one voice came through. This is Ortega. Mission complete. The weapon is gone, but so are we. Silence followed. Reeve lowered his head. Around him, no one spoke. Humanity had won another battle. But at what cost? He looked out the window at the stars. Rest well, Captain, he whispered. You bought us time. Now we'll finish what you started. But in the shadows of deep space, something still moved. A signal, faint and pulsing, from the ruins of Careth Prime. The weapon was not dead. It was awake. The explosion that destroyed the Careth weapon had lit the sky of a dead world. 4 hours after, the ruins of Careth Prime burned quietly under the red clouds. Everyone believed the danger was over. They were wrong. Deep beneath the ashes, under tons of rock and melted metal, something still moved. A slow pulse. A whisper of energy. Like a heartbeat that refused to die. On Earth, weeks later, the Terran Council met inside the orbital station Helios 1. Holographic screens floated in the air, showing thousands of news feeds, parades for the fallen, speeches of victory, images of Captain Ortega's final transmission. Admiral Marcus Reeve watched silently. To the world, humanity had won. But he couldn't shake a feeling, the kind that kept soldiers awake long after wars ended. Dr. Mia Chen approached him with a data tablet. Sir, she said quietly, we received strange readings from the Vega sector. Energy spikes, the same signature as the Careth weapon. Reeve frowned. That's impossible. Ortega destroyed it. I thought so too, Chen said. But this isn't just one location. The same signal is appearing in 3 systems. It's spreading. Reeve's jaw tightened. Like a virus. In the dark of deep space, far from any sun, the wreckage of the Careth facility floated in silence. And inside that silence, something woke. Through the cracks of broken metal, thin tendrils of red light crawled out. They reached for drifting debris, wrapping around it, pulling it close, rebuilding, reshaping. Pieces of armor, engines, bones. Everything fused together into something new. It wasn't a machine anymore. It wasn't alive either. It was both. And in its core, Commander Vale opened his eyes. He should have died in the explosion, but the weapon had saved him, or consumed him. His voice came out distorted, half human, half thunder. I am chosen, he whispered. The Emperor lives through me. The red light flared. The wreckage began to move. A new ship rose from the ashes, powered by the ancient heart of the weapon. Back on Earth, Admiral Reeve stood before the Council. We're facing something different now, he said. This isn't another empire. This is something that feeds on war. The Careth found it, but now it's found us. The councillors argued, some demanded more fleets, others spoke of retreat. But Reeve had already made his decision. We fight smarter this time, he said. Not with fire. With knowledge. He turned to Dr. Chen. Decode the signal. Find where it's spreading from. And get me a team that can go where no ship can, the dark systems. Chen nodded slowly. There's one person who might help, she said. A survivor from Ortega's crew. Reeve's eyes widened. A survivor? Yes, Chen said. Found in Escape Pod 3. The pilot, Lieutenant Rain. In the Terran medical station, Lieutenant Rain lay on a hospital bed, her body covered in scars. When Reeve entered, she sat up slowly. Sir, she whispered. It wasn't destroyed. Reeve nodded. We know. Rain's hands trembled. It talked to me. Before the explosion. A voice in my helmet. It said, "You are the spark." Then everything went white. Reeve frowned. A voice. It sounded human, she said. But older. Like it remembered me. The room fell silent. Reeve finally said, "Get her to Dr. Chen. We need every detail. If that thing is thinking, we have to know what it wants." Meanwhile, far across the void, the rebuilt war machine drifted toward human space. Inside, Vale, or what was left of him, stood before a massive red core that pulsed with slow rhythm. "Why did you save me?" he asked the voice that filled the chamber. The answer came not in words, but in feeling, a flood of hunger, rage, and purpose. Images filled Vale's mind, burning worlds, dead gods, endless wars. "You want war," Vale said slowly. The voice inside him whispered back, "War is life." Vale smiled, his eyes glowing like twin suns. "Then I will give you a galaxy full of life." On Earth, the warning came too late. Terran outposts at the edge of human space began to vanish one by one. Ships reported strange signals before going dark, whispers through the radio, systems failing, shadows moving in the stars. Dr. Chen stood before the main screen in the command center. The energy reading spiked again, massive, bright, spreading fast. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking. "It's not attacking planets. It's waking something beneath them." Reeve turned to her sharply. "Waking what?" She looked at him, pale and afraid. "Whatever it is, it's older than all of us." The lights in the command room flickered. Every monitor flashed red. And across every screen appeared the same words. "Hello, children of Earth. You found my heart. Now find my hands." The crew stared at the screens in silence. Admiral Reeve whispered, "God help us." Because now, they realized, the war wasn't just between humans and the Karath. It was against something far greater. Something that had been waiting for millions of years. And as the stars dimmed one by one in the distant sky, humanity took its first step into a new kind of war, a war not for territory, but for existence itself. The message had spread across every human system. "Hello, children of Earth. You found my heart. Now find my hands." No one slept that night. The stars themselves felt wrong, as if something huge was moving behind them, watching, waiting. In the orbital command center, Admiral Marcus Reeve stood before the dark window. He had seen many battles. He had lost friends, ships, and worlds. But this was something different. Dr. Mia Chen entered, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. She placed a data chip on the table. "Sir," she said softly, "we found something in the old archives, before the Alliance, before the colonies. A signal buried deep under Earth's moon." Reeve frowned. "Under Luna? That's impossible." "It's been there for centuries," Chen said. "And the frequency, it's the same as the Karath weapon." The room fell silent. Reeve's hand tightened on the table. "So this thing, it didn't come from them. It came from us." A day later, a Terran ship named Eclipse descended toward the moon. Dr. Chen led the mission, accompanied by Lieutenant Rain, the last survivor of Ortega's crew. They landed near the South Pole, where long shadows covered ancient craters. The scanners showed something impossible, metal structures buried miles beneath the rock. Old. Older than human civilization. As the team drilled through the surface, the instruments began to malfunction. Static filled their comms. The ground vibrated softly, like a pulse. Rain whispered, "It feels alive." Then the drill hit something. A blinding light burst from the hole, white, pure, endless. The crew stumbled back, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, a smooth black surface lay beneath the dust, marked with strange symbols. Dr. Chen traced her hand over them. "These aren't Karath, they're human." Rain blinked. "Human? How?" This must be millions of years old. Chen's voice shook. Maybe humanity isn't as young as we think. Hours later, deep inside the lunar site, they found a chamber filled with floating orbs of light. Each orb played a vision, pieces of a forgotten story. One showed vast cities made of glass and gold, orbiting a blue giant star. Another showed two armies, one of flesh and one of metal, clashing in fire. And in the final vision, a voice spoke. We made the weapons to protect us. But they chose to protect themselves. When the stars screamed, we fell silent. The cycle will begin again. The orbs faded. Dr. Chen looked at Rain. They weren't aliens. They were our ancestors. Humanity was part of the first galactic civilization, millions of years ago. Rain swallowed hard. And the weapon? Chen stared into the darkness. It was one of theirs, one of ours. It was built to fight a war that never ended. Back on Earth, Admiral Reeve listened to their transmission with growing dread. So we didn't discover it, he said. We woke it. Dr. Chen's voice came through the static. Sir, there's more. The energy core in the weapon, it's not technology. It's biological. It's alive. And it's searching for its other pieces. Reeve leaned forward. Other pieces? Yes, she said. The message, find my hands, it means there are more of them. The weapon on Careth Prime was only one part. Before she could continue, the comms erupted in static. A deep, distorted voice replaced her. You dig up my bones and call them relics. But I am no relic. I am the memory of war. The transmission ended. Reeve turned to his officers. Get a fleet ready. If that thing finds its other parts before we do, it won't just be the end of humanity, it'll be the end of everything. Far away, in the dark beyond the colonies, the creature that had once been Commander Vale floated through space. His body was no longer flesh. His armor had merged with the red energy, forming wings of light that stretched miles wide. He followed a signal, faint but growing stronger. It led him to a dead star. Around it drifted pieces of something ancient, black machines frozen in orbit. As he reached out, the red glow spread from his body to the machines. They came alive. Thousands of dark shapes unfolded, their eyes opening one by one, glowing crimson. Vale's voice echoed through the void. Rise, brothers. The war of the old gods begins anew. The stars around him flickered, then went out. On the moon, Rain felt a sudden wave of energy pass through her body. The lights in the chamber dimmed. The orbs of light began to vanish one by one, whispering faint words as they died. He is awake. He remembers the war. He remembers us. Dr. Chen looked up, eyes wide with fear. Rain, she whispered. He's coming here. Rain turned toward the tunnel leading back to the surface. We need to warn Earth. But before they could move, the black surface beneath them started to crack. A blinding red light burst out, and a deep, ancient voice filled the chamber. I found my hands. From Earth, Admiral Reeve watched in horror as the moon's entire south pole lit up in red. Energy readings spiked beyond anything ever recorded. Sir! An officer shouted. We're detecting multiple objects leaving the lunar surface. On the screen, red lights rose from the moon, thousands of them, spreading outward like a swarm. Dr. Chen's broken voice came through the comm one last time. It's not a weapon anymore. It's becoming something bigger. The transmission cut off. Reeve stared at the screen, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly small. The war that began with a diplomat's death had become something else entirely. A fight against a god made of humanity's own forgotten sins. But even gods can bleed. And humanity, stubborn, furious, defiant humanity, was not done fighting yet. The red lights spread across the night sky like veins of fire. Every telescope, every satellite, every human eye turned upward as the moon burned in crimson light. Humanity was silent. For the first time, even the stars seemed afraid. In the orbital command center, alarms screamed. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood at the center of chaos, eyes locked on the massive screen that showed the swarm rising from the moon. "They're not ships," whispered an officer. They're alive." The swarm moved like a single creature, red trails flowing behind it, forming strange patterns, like runes in motion. Each light was a drone, a weapon, a piece of something older than time. Dr. Chen's last transmission played on repeat. "It's not a weapon anymore. It's becoming something bigger." Reeve clenched his fists. "Then we kill it before it finishes becoming." The human fleet gathered near Mars, hundreds of ships, from old gun frigates to massive dreadnoughts. They floated together in silence, waiting. Captain Imani stood on the bridge of Solar Spear, the flagship of the fleet. Her voice echoed through the comms, steady and fierce. "Listen up, people. That thing thinks it's a god. But gods die when men stop kneeling. Today, we remind the universe what humanity does when it's pushed too far." Cheers broke out across the fleet. Old soldiers smiled. Young pilots whispered prayers. And in that moment, humanity wasn't afraid anymore. The swarm arrived first. Thousands of red shapes streaked through space like arrows of fire. The front lines opened fire, plasma beams, missiles, railgun rounds, lighting the void with blue and gold. The swarm answered with silence. Then, in perfect harmony, every red light pulsed, and half the fleet systems shut down. EMP waves rippled through the ships. Screens went dark. Engines died. On Solar Spear, alarms blared. Shields offline. Main reactor unstable. Imani shouted, "Reboot manual. Do it now." Crew members scrambled. Sparks flew. Outside, the swarm closed in, red eyes reflecting on the ship's armor like fireflies of death. And then, a new signal appeared on the scanners. A single human ship, old, damaged, unregistered, flying straight toward the swarm. Admiral Reeves' eyes widened. "What ship is that?" The technician hesitated. "ID confirms. It's the Ortega." Reeve froze. "That's impossible. Ortega's dead." On the screen, the ship's transponder flickered, and a voice came through, calm and steady. "Admiral. This is Captain Elias Ortega. Sorry for the long silence." The command room went dead quiet. Reeve swallowed hard. "Ortega, how are you alive?" "Long story, sir. Let's just say, the machine remembers me. And I remember how to hurt it." Inside the Ortega, Captain Elias Ortega stood at the helm. His body was scarred, his right arm now metallic, glowing faintly with the same red light as the weapon he had once fought. Behind him, the ship's AI flickered, half-human in tone. It was the remnant of the lunar weapon, the heart of war. "You should not fight me," it said. "You are part of me." Ortega smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'm the part that learned regret." He pushed the throttle forward. The Ortega accelerated, faster than any human ship should move. Straight into the center of the swarm. From afar, the fleet watched as the lone ship disappeared into the storm of red. "Ortega!" Reeves shouted into the comm, "What are you doing?" "Finishing the war we didn't start." The Ortega dove deep into the swarm. Its hull melted. Systems failed. But deep within, Ortega reached the core, a massive black sphere pulsing with red veins. He placed his metal hand on the console. "Hey, old god," he whispered. "You wanted your heart back? Take it." He activated the link between his cybernetic arm and the core, a connection of flesh, metal, and will. The AI screamed. Red lightning tore across the swarm. Ships exploded. Space itself rippled as energy surged out in every direction. Ortega closed his eyes. Images flashed in his mind, Earth, the stars, every life humanity had ever lost. "For the diplomat you killed," he said softly. "And for every soul you tried to erase." He smiled. "Humanity says hello." He triggered the overload. The explosion was silent, but brighter than a sun. For a few moments, Every sensor across the solar system went blind. When the light faded, the swarm was gone. Only ashes of energy floated in the void, fading, quiet, defeated. And where the Ortega had been, there was nothing. Just empty space, and peace. Weeks later, the moon was calm again. No red lights. No signals. Humanity had survived, but at a cost. Admiral Reeve stood at a memorial wall, reading the names. At the top, one name was carved in fresh steel. Captain Elias Ortega, humanity's first godslayer. Dr. Chen placed a hand on the wall. He became part of it in the end, she said softly. But maybe, that's why we won. Reeve nodded. Maybe the only thing stronger than fear is a human who refuses to die quietly. Far away, beyond the edge of the galaxy, a small fragment of red light drifted through the dark. It pulsed once, softly, almost like a heartbeat. And then, from the darkness, a faint whisper echoed. They killed a human diplomat. And humanity answered.